The world had changed, but for James Holloway, time still moved like it did in the trenches, slow, heavy, and uncertain. Boston was alive with parades and laughter, but inside he carried a silence no crowd could drown. Every morning he woke before sunrise, hands trembling, the sound of artillery still echoing somewhere in the back of his mind. The war had ended on paper, but not in his heart. Anna Keller noticed it too. She'd see him pause mid-conversation, eyes distant, as if listening to ghosts. She didn't ask questions. She just made coffee and waited. One October morning, while raking leaves in her small front yard, Anna looked up at James and said, "You know, Will used to hate autumn. He said it always felt like the world was dying again." James smiled faintly. "I used to like it, the smell of it. Now it just reminds me of smoke." They stood there quietly, surrounded by falling leaves, each lost in their own memories. The photograph. One evening, as James was repairing a broken radio in Anna's living room, he found a small wooden box on the shelf. Inside were old photographs, some faded, some torn. He hesitated, then pulled one out. It was William again, smiling in uniform beside another man. The man looked familiar. He leaned closer. It was him. The photo had been taken in Normandy, though he didn't remember it. Anna noticed his expression. "You're in that picture, aren't you?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I didn't know anyone took it." She smiled softly. Will must have wanted to remember the good days. "Were there any?" he asked quietly. She thought for a moment. Maybe not for the world, but maybe for him, the moments he spent believing there'd be something after it all. James looked at the photo again. "Something after," he repeated. "That's what I keep wondering about." The night train. That winter, James began taking long walks through the city at night. Sometimes he'd end up by the train station, watching engines hiss and steam under the moonlight. He loved the sound, the whistle, the rhythm, because it meant motion, moving forward, leaving something behind. One night, Anna found him there. She had followed quietly, a shawl around her shoulders. She said, "You walk like you're looking for something." "Maybe I am," he replied. "What is it?" He thought for a long time before answering. "Forgiveness." "From who?" He looked away. "Myself." She said nothing, just slipped her hand through his arm. They stood like that, watching the trains come and go, steam curling around them like ghosts dissolving into air. Letters never sent. In the months that followed, James began writing again. Not to anyone in particular, just to clear the fog in his mind. He wrote to William, to Lydia, to the men he'd buried in foreign soil. He never sent any of them. He folded each letter neatly and kept them in a drawer. Sometimes Anna would see him writing and smile. "That's good," she said once. "It helps." But one evening, she found him burning a handful of pages in the fireplace. She frowned. "Why would you do that?" He stared at the flames. "Because some words aren't meant to be kept." Anna knelt beside him. "Maybe, but some deserve to be heard, even if it's just by one person." He looked at her, the firelight flickering across his face. "Would you want to read them?" She nodded. He hesitated, then handed her one of the unburned pages. It read, "Dear Keller, I'm sorry. For not saving you. For not knowing how. For still being here when you're not. Sometimes I think about the sound of your harmonica in the cold, and it feels like home again. Your sister safe. You'd be proud. J." Anna folded the page carefully. Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled. He'd forgive you, you know. He never blamed anyone, not even when things went wrong. James whispered, I wish I believed that. The storm. One night, a violent storm rolled over Boston, thunder cracking like artillery, rain slamming against the windows. James woke in a panic, heart pounding, disoriented. He reached for his rifle, but it wasn't there. Only the dark room, the flash of lightning, and the pounding rain. He stumbled to the kitchen, gasping for air. Then he heard footsteps. Anna appeared, holding a candle. James, she said softly, it's just a storm. He pressed his hands to his temples. I can't breathe. It's like I'm back there. She stepped closer, took his shaking hands, and guided them to her chest. Feel that, she whispered. It's real. You're here. You're safe. For the first time, he let himself cry. Years of grief, guilt, and fear broke loose like the thunder outside. Anna held him until the storm passed. The piano. When spring came, Anna began playing the piano again. Soft melodies filled the house, fragments of peace between long silences. One afternoon, she asked, Do you remember any songs from the war? James nodded. Yeah, but they all sound sad now. Play one for me, she said. He hesitated, then sat beside her. His fingers were stiff, unsure, but he pressed the keys slowly. An old tune the men used to hum in the trenches. Anna joined in, her voice quiet, fragile but steady. The song carried through the house like a prayer. When it ended, James whispered, That's the first time I felt normal. Anna smiled gently. Maybe that's how healing starts. The beginning of something. That summer, James started working at a mechanic shop downtown, fixing cars, listening to the radio, and watching life slowly return to normal. Every evening he'd walk to Anna's house. Sometimes they'd talk for hours. Sometimes they just sat in silence, watching the sunset through the maple leaves. One evening, as fireflies lit the yard, Anna said softly, You know, Will used to say people never really die. They just become stories. James smiled. Then he's everywhere, isn't he? Yes. And maybe now you are too. He looked at her, the wind moving softly through her hair, and for the first time in a long, long while, he felt the quiet warmth of belonging. As the night deepened, he stood to leave. Anna followed him to the door. James, she said. He turned. Thank you for keeping your promise. He nodded, his voice low but certain. It wasn't just a promise to him, it was a promise to myself. Then he smiled, a real smile, and walked into the night, the echo of her piano following him down the empty street.